But I saw them. Hello, hello.
People seem happier and it's 3 hours. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna do for the butterfly. Oh, this is not your last name, is it? No. These are the other two. Well, this one's Elijah. He thinks he's not. You don't know yet. And that's Indiana. I'm one of those. Ooh, you ugly child. You already got people playing in his hair. He's 10. She's 8. She's very tiny. So everyone always thinks she's 6.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
For those that don't know who I am, I know it's Antoinette, but no one calls me Antoinette. That's only if I'm in trouble. I have to give that disclaimer every time. I am one to like to respect everyone's time. I know we're live, so I want to welcome everyone that is viewing. Again, my name is Toni Cousins. I am the co-chair for this particular committee, and I want to welcome everyone that has taken this time to actually come. There's a lot I know going on, but this is very important. You guys see before you a lot of different packages, and that's because I want to make sure everyone understands our why we're here. This is reading material for you to take home. We did send it via email, but I didn't want to kill too many trees. I'm sorry, but I still wanted you guys to really have it in hand. I'm a visual person, so it really helps when I'm able to highlight things that are going on. I'm going to again get started for the sake of time. It has on here roll call. I really, if you guys don't need it, I'm really not a roll call person. I'm looking around and I think I'm okay staff wise. I mean, board members wise, it look like it's just 2 of us. So I think we can proceed if everyone is comfortable with that. So before getting started, as I stated, I wanted to kind of give some ground rules on what we're going to be doing. I don't meet to meet, or none of us should meet to meet. We've had long days, so I want to get to the point, make sure everyone has a clear understanding as to why we're here. Those that are at the table, you actually received an email with a letter. And that letter is very important because it's really given our why. And I kind of wanted to go over some of the things in the letter. Again, you guys have been chosen for a reason. And I, as well as the board members, want to thank you guys for taking the time to be a part of this very important project that's going to take time. It's not something that's going to occur overnight. We may have some bumps in the road, but hey, we're here and I hope we're all here for the same purpose. And that's to kind of identify what and how we can create a plan to address the needs of St. Louis City in regards to education. While we've launched this process at our kickoff meeting on October the 24th, we want to take a moment to reiterate why the Board of Education called for the development of the citywide plan last February. Over the past 10 years, 19 charters have opened and closed. And last school year, SLPS closed 8 public schools, acknowledging the loss of students to relocation to the county or out of state and to transfer. Public schools, both SLPS and charter, have been forced to compete for a dwindling number of students amid threats to funding needs needed to support the programs to be successful. Sociologist Eve Ewing, in her book, stated, "Ghost in the Schoolyard," argues that every school closing represents a policy decision that is equivalent to a death, where the mourning is both personal and historical. These school closings and the impact of the closings on the community they serve participated this decision, but school closings are not the reason for this committee or the citywide plan. And that's something I want to make sure everyone fully understands. It's not necessarily about the school closing, but we have to look at the population that was before for St. Louis City and the population that we're dealing with now. In 1960, the city of St. Louis population was 700,000 and SLPS educated over 100 students. Today, St. Louis is a city of 300 and has a total school age population of 45,000 children. Less than 20 years ago, 100% of those students would have attended SLPS. Today, there are fewer students in the city and more than 36 charter schools serving approximately 11,000 students and 60 St. Louis public schools serving 18,000. While both the city's demographics and the educational landscapes have drastically changed over the last 60 years, none of these changes were done by design. Most of the decisions about how our public school systems operate today in this city were made by decision makers who have little in common with the students and families they serve. We are undertaking a citywide plan because we want to be intentional about creating schools that best serve every student living and learning in the city of St. Louis. In order to end the instability of our current system, this process must be honest, transparent, and inclusive. Our next meeting is scheduled for today. That's why we're here. What we're here to do, and we had a discussion before in the first meeting, and that discussion was from Dr. Pollack, who kind of gave us an overview of where the district and charter schools were in regards to the issues with the closing of the schools or the populations that each school had, or just kind of seeing where those relationships have actually correlated. What we're going to do tonight is actually have Mr. Don Rowe speak on just what we've been talking about, looking at data-wise, how and where St. Louis City was in regards to the need to have as many schools as we had, and how and where we need to move forward in identifying where we're going to be working to create a plan. These meetings in the beginning are just the informational aspect, just for us to get a baseline of what and why we're here. Moving forward, you're going to start seeing come January and February, within the upcoming year, we're literally going to start laying out work groups and focus groups where we will actually be getting input from the community. This has never been done in the history of me, and I'm 50, just so y'all know. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, I kind of got it. But this has not been done where you've brought city divisions or departments, the mayor's office, the board of aldermen, and the school board. For years, everyone has been working in silos, and there's no way we can do or try to achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve in silos. The city is working on a huge process right now, and that's the reduction of the board of aldermen and redistricting and laying out what the city is actually going to look like. So that's why, in my opinion, it's very important that we're doing this at this moment. So without any other ado, any questions, if you have any questions, I'm going to hold them if that's okay. But I wanted to bring Mr. Don Rowe, who's the Executive Director of Planning and Urban Designing. Don Rowe has a wealth of knowledge. And what he's going to share with us, I really hope you guys really take it in, take as many notes as you possibly can. And if you have any questions, again, we'll go into discussion. Ground rules is everybody is in here as a team. It's not a bashing moment. It's not, negativity. We're just here to figure out how do we make this work for the city of St. Louis. So without any, if there is no questions in regards to me, at this time, I would like to bring Mr. Don Rowe before us.
There we go. So Tony mentioned that I'm a fountain of knowledge. Well, I hope I can provide you some knowledge and some helpful guidance. I learned one new thing tonight. I now know Tony's age. So that will be our little secret. But I've been around for a while, and so I'm happy to be here and help you as you embark on this process, which I view as absolutely critical. And do my little test here. Did I get which of these buttons? The top one? Oh, there we go. So I have been around for a while. And as I look at this map, and you may have to focus a little bit on it, it's in your handout. It's an aerial photograph of the region with the county outlined and the city outlined. And one of the reasons I bring it is reminding ourselves of our 66 square miles, which includes part of the river, that the river is there. And in our city, we know it well, but it's also, I'm showing it to you partly in a perspective of people that are marketing and doing products, is that in the 62 square miles is your footprint, but people that make some choices, for instance, there was, about 15 years ago, I bumped into an alderperson, a mayor's office person in Brentwood. And where we were at was at the Best Buy, just a little bit into the county. And we all looked at each other and sort of embarrassed that we were there and buying items at Christmas time. But the lesson of that story is some people, some entities, some folks that have a product, have a trade area where they work. And so that trade area of that Best Buy was a circle that comes into the city, captures some neighborhoods, a good size of the neighborhoods, and draws them out to the county. Part of the challenge with that is part of the city that's trying to get those amenities that are close to the river. The river is an impediment. You only can get to cross it at certain spots on the river. So there's a certain landlocked part to some types of choices. And that's just something key to remember as you have competition these days. But what I remember about it is that when my 22-year-old son was at Metro High School, he had two classmates that he was close to that were from Pacific and Eureka that came to the magnet schools from outside the city area up to the city. And I think that to me was an important thing to sort of remember, that we're serving the kids of the city, but we're providing educational opportunities of the highest quality, and it can be attractive to folks. And is attractive to folks. Tony mentioned that the Board of Aldermen, and I hope the committee meeting is not still going on, that started earlier, that's wrestling with redistricting, is going to shorten the number of wards in the city, the geographic wards, from 28 to 14. It is always a challenge to be thinking about how to get political representation properly in a city council or board of aldermen. But this is a really big challenge because they're cutting themselves from 28 to 14. The slide that I have up is something that's not changing, and that is the 79 city designated neighborhoods across the city. So every spot in the city is in one of these 79 neighborhoods. And I love to remind ourselves that these neighborhoods are where people live. They're branded in some way. They're people's homes, and they're the building blocks of cities. And certainly change in population change over time, but we have these 79 and they're not changing. And so this opportunity that's happening with the Board of Aldermen and the wrestling with that will change some representation, but the building blocks of the city and the neighborhoods are going to be essentially the same. I say that because as I give you some more introduction, Tony made a point that we're doing a neighborhood planning effort now in the city that's going to be quite robust. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. As Tony gave you a little bit of history, the city of St. Louis population has declined from 1950 to current. You see in the bar chart, Same 66 square miles, 62 square miles of land. It's 1950 as to now. And you can see the curve, the drop in the population. We all know it, but it's sort of a pretty stark reminder that we're a city that has lost population. We've not lost population evenly around the city. And in fact, some portions of the city, the relative density, if you measured it in square miles, is about the same as it was in the 1950s. So in some of those neighborhoods are pretty dense. The change also shows up on this map, which is, and you'll unfortunately can see some of what's being conveyed on this map from anywhere in the room looking at the monitors, in that it is a map of vacancy in the city of St. Louis. So if it's colored in and shaded, it's a city park or it's a vacant house, residence or property. And you can see they're clustered in the north side of St. Louis. Now, I think you've heard from one of my colleagues, Neil Richardson, that in the big picture planning for the city of St. Louis, we're saying, let's be respectful, understand what our conditions are in the past, what our conditions are for now, and plan on improving the lives of the people that are here, but let's seek to gain a population. So we put a number up, 30,000 folks. So 30,000 folks is a target. This map is a little geeky for us in that it really shows that if it's shaded, it's a residential zone property or a vacant property. Why I look at this, and as we might look at it in the future in more detail, those are the opportunities where housing can be built. But when it's vacant, that's also an opportunity to housing be built, but it's a mixture with what's there and what's opportunity. That's a challenge for us. Again, some parts of the city have a certain density. This picture is really just a snapshot of action in the city with the home builders, with home building and building permits in general. Anything that's on this map, and this is a 1 month period, that's a circle, a square, or a triangle, is a residential construction or rehab. The other dots or other symbols are other types of building permits, and you're seeing it, is of all types. They're distributed not evenly across the city. They're mainly in the central corridor around Forest Park and to the south. And there's just a humble amount of the residential construction in North St. Louis. Truism. Now, that data over time versus just a 1 month snapshot is something that you'll investigate and use. But it's somewhat reminding of us all, and certainly the people in the city building, that we have work to do. Work to retain folks where they are. And retaining folks where they are is a whole series of choices, but it's also having amenities for where people live in their neighborhoods, things that they need, institutions and the like, and things that they enjoy. Now, I'm going to do a visual aid. Sorry for those in the back. And put it on the screen too. And this is a map that's in your handout, and I'll leave them. But I think this is going to end up being for the second one. But I'm going to show you two. And the importance of showing you two. The only census data that's on here is about the population of 18 years behind. And this particular map is 2010. So if you look at it from afar, you can see that there's cool spots and hot spots. And it's the hot spots, the red areas are where the highest density of under 18 population is in our city. And if you're up close, you'll know that we've included a variety of institutions, the schools, such as your own, parochial schools, others, and some other key partners. But look at that distribution. Remember, I've shown you some maps of vacancy that are contemporary. And now I'll change the slide. And so I'm not a magician, but I'm going to show you something that's different. So we talked about our city leadership been awaiting for data to do the redistricting. And this is contemporary. This is the most recent data we have from the census. And this shows essentially the same map, but we're now the 2020 census. And just in your mind's eye, you can see and probably even remember from the last map that the clusters are of a different intensity in far different parts of the city. So as you're working and developing this, yeah, there are changes. And the changes are including greater concentrations in density in some parts and far less in other parts. So in many ways, that's the real challenge, is to be able to understand that not only are there things that are smaller in numbers and populations than they were before, but there's some changing dynamics to it also. So this slide, oh, by the way, so remember our population right now in the current census is 301,578. I may have gotten 78 wrong, but it's 301,000. There are 54,000 residents of the city of St. Louis under the age of 18. So as you looked at your enrollment statistics, as Tony reported them, and remember the under 18 crowd now totals 54,000 of that total and distributed into this. Obviously, that's something you're looking at. The slide that I have in front of you has two things on it. And it's important that I talk to you about these two things, because one is a repeat of this slide. On the left side on the slide is this slide again. On the right-hand side is, as we look at the city and we think of what the Biden administration has brought forth as opportunities for the city to get resources, these are, on the right-hand side, there's the zip codes. We'll get to be familiar with zip codes. But the shaded areas are qualified census tracts. And in that speak, it's a federal qualification for census tracts that the money in general that we're getting from these extra funds will be able to be expended in those census tracts. So as you see this, and we make judgments of what we're doing in the future, you can see where we'll have some resources to pay attention to. Now, I actually only have two more slides. This next one, and again, you immediately saw where the geography is, and they're shaded by neighborhood. These are per a designation that we've also done from HUD, our priority areas with a program within HUD, the neighborhood revitalization strategy areas. And that's important. So you're getting a feel for where we will have some resources to pay attention to. And as Tony said, as I said, we have an overall goal, or several goals, of the 300,000 the equitable and economic justice activities we should do across the city. And then a few years ago, there was a tax on the ballot with a number of things. You may remember as the number one item on it was Metrolink, expansion of North-South Metrolink. And that was a key thing. Voters approved that as the value of transit is to our communities. And so our voters approved that tax, made us the highest sales tax in the region for a while to do that. It had some other aspects within it. And one of the aspects was a dedicated from that tax, a dedicated funding source. We shorthand and call that tax the Eco-Devo tax, to do neighborhood planning. We've been lax in doing neighborhood planning because we haven't had the resources for a while. And as I told you and said, that we viewed neighborhoods as the building blocks of cities. They're people's homes, they're areas that people promote, all that. We now have funding to do primarily a staff-based, but community-based for input, plan for how many neighborhoods? 79 neighborhoods. It's going to take a while to do that, but we're embarking and we've been hiring staff. We've been set back a little bit by COVID because we want this to be a community engaged process with neighborhoods and neighborhood residents and stakeholders. So we're hiring staff. We have a special focus that has had some momentum around the NGA area, which we call Project Connect, and a series of 6 neighborhoods around there. But we're starting also that process for those neighborhoods and also other neighborhoods, primarily in those areas where the double whammy is the 2 types of federal designation that we have. So we're in the process of getting that dedicated staff. We'll be deploying them in the spring. And our neighborhood planning efforts will be, could be 12 months, could be 18 months. We're going to move at the speed of trust with these neighborhoods, with neighborhood committees helping us, dedicated staff people, other resources in terms of consultants to help us get it right and respond, and create a plan that isn't just about zoning and land use, but will address other issues of concern. The laundry list will be able to be amended by the neighborhood itself to include crime, open space, education to a degree, a variety of topics to be able to put in their roadmap. And like I said, that's going to reach in a stair-step way all the 79 neighborhoods. And there'll be assets of showing and proving from those where locations are for development, for housing development, where we can spend that federal funds, where we can leverage the private sector funds. So that's sort of a context that you've known a little bit about the population loss, and to tell you that we're actively working on neighborhood planning, which will also have an additional key, is that as you see those various funding sources, there are sources of funding to help implement those neighborhood plans, and that's a little bit of a difference than we had in the past. So that's what I came here in a nutshell to talk to you about. I'm going to continue to visit with you and be on the committee as much as I can to help you. But that's the perspective that I talked about with Tony to give you. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Rowe?
Yeah, I have one. First of all, again, thank you very much for being here. Very important information, the same kind of information we use when we obviously made some decisions around school consolidation. But it's a 2-part question. How will the current redistricting and the Biden infrastructure funding, in your view, impact the neighborhood planning? And what will be the accountability expectation that has been set for yourself relative to this planning process?
Well, the number one accountability part is we're going to work at the speed of trust with the neighborhoods. And so we, you know, frankly, with aldermen of different skill sets and different, situations in the neighborhood, it can get a little cattywampus. We'll have a committee that will help us, that will be randomly selected. They'll nominate themselves, or others will nominate them. We will then randomly select them, so we get a respective of the demographics of the neighborhood, and they'll be with us through the whole process. We'll do community engagement robustly. That will loop back if we think, or if we're told by the neighborhood, this stage of the plan didn't really quite get all the community engagement that is needed for this. So that collective part and moving at the speed of trust is something that I'm really excited that we're going to do, and be really patient about doing that. The patience about doing that is including a respect for those local stakeholders. And because sometimes, things have been traumatized because, oh, gee, another process, but that's the particular part. The second part is also included back to your first question. The EcoDevo money also has two separate pots of money other than for us as a staff and consultants. One is for neighborhoods that are in the queue, to use some money to help get them organized in advance, to be able to be more helpful and receptive to our planning activities. So they're primed. We're not just helicoptering in, but they're primed to be ready. And ready doesn't mean, completely engaged, but ready for us to come in and move and again, do our process at the speed of trust. The other set of money, and it's a humble amount of money, but it has a lot of zeros behind it, it is dedicated money for some key implementation items in each of these plans. That's city money, and that's an unusual thing. It's not divided by 28 or 14. It's dedicated to go to its annual appropriation, dedicated to go to these communities. Is it a lot of money? No, but it's a pump prime. We usually haven't had that, and that will give momentum. We'll do key items. And then as we sit back, and Lance is here from SLDC, we're not sitting back these days trying to figure out how to get everything, our ducks in a row for using the Biden money is a big task, because we have a lot of that resources. And that's, I don't want to say the thing that once in a lifetime opportunity, but for the city of St. Louis to get the size of ARPA funds that we did, $500 million, that's a game changer. So that's how I view it.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Lori, and I was just wondering what you meant when you said that you were deploying staff this spring.
Oh, we're in the process of hiring. We're in the process of training some of them. And I think maybe why I use that word is some that we've hired now that are doing some general things and helping in the Project Connect area, which has sort of its own momentum. They'll go to a neighborhood. Some people will shadow them as they're going. Then the folks that have done that shadowing will move on to another neighborhood. And as we ramp up with more staff, we'll be deploying people more and more, getting a feel of it, then going on to neighborhoods.
Ms. Nolan.
Hi, thank you. I'm Gloria Nolan, parent of an SLPS students. I just wanted to know, you talked about your putting together your teams, the groups of people from the communities. And I just wondered what it would look like to be more intentional around including parents in that. Instead of it being random, this is, like we're cleaning the slate and really looking forward to being intentional about engaging key stakeholders, especially those around public schools in those processes. And so I was just wondering what that would look like to be intentional about including those folks.
Great question. Great question. And I'm going to give you two answers. One is, of course, in the leadership of the community and getting it at random. That's important. any stakeholder group will be involved in making presentations and meetings and working with everybody together. But the thing that you just reminded me of is, as we're doing this randomly and intentionally, we also want to make sure that at the end of the day in our random process, we've gotten a cross-section of and suitable representation from the community. And you just reminded me of one of those criteria, parents. So where does your son or daughter go to school?
They're both at Mallinckrodt Academy.
Any other questions?
I had looked up online, any information about the Eco Devo tax, and I couldn't find any sort of accountability for how the money is spent or the group of people that are part of it. Like, all of it is just kind of blank. You just click on it, even the agendas that have happened, which was what, or earlier in March?
Yeah.
So how is money being divided up into these little subgroups? that
So
you-
cool. So I think there's about 6 subgroups. One being the Metrolink or transit kitty to be able to expand transit. So that builds each year. And then there's some from capital improvements, other capital improvements. And then, for instance, for the neighborhood planning process, it comes to annual allocation that has to be dealt with in two manners. It's in the city budget, so it has to be approved in the city budget. And what you were seeing on the website was not my group and the planning group, but there was a special committee set up to be sort of the middle ground about each year analyzing how performance has gone and making the New Year's allocation out of the funding. And that's a citizen board. It's a good point to say, if you're not finding it on the website, I'll nudge folks.
One more question. What
Yeah.
does capital improvements mean in terms of, because it seems like that might be the higher allocation of that budget.
Yeah, so capital improvements could be from a fire station to a sidewalk to a bridge. The physical infrastructure type things. And, we're stretching some things that when you hear the word infrastructure, that includes like better access to Wi-Fi, or better access to the internet, Wi-Fi, and those type of things. And, my engineering colleagues might not have thought of that as much as being infrastructure, but we sure do.
Any other questions for Mr. Rowe?
Mr. Rowe, you said earlier that the plan was going to include things, not just neighborhood specific, but it would be areas like crime, open space, and education. I was just wondering if you knew the level and degree.
So those, and the list gets to be about small business, and there's a couple of things that we're going to require that will drive development. But then there are a menu of things like what I just mentioned that will be included for the neighborhood to discuss. That's something that we want to have in a document that's going to be adopted by the city for their own reference, for guiding what to do as next steps, and for outside people looking in to say, what's that neighborhood concern? And remember, you're going to hear this a little bit more from our administration, is data-informed decision-making. And so part of it will be when we go to neighborhoods, and both from stakeholders and from residents and data sources, getting more stuff like this to help be in the factors as to what's there, and then guiding ourselves and having the guidance of the neighborhood. What are we going to focus on? And, what are the problems and what are the opportunities?
Any
Do you
other?
have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you.
This again, and what Mr. Rowe has brought before us is really why it's important for us to be doing the business that we're in the business of doing in regards to the citywide planning. I think, and especially what he's saying and what Ms. Nolan had asked about and bringing the parents to the table, it's kind of like what the city is working on in identifying the housing need, the this and that need. is really where we can actually serve and work together. When they're having those community type meetings and they're rallying and doing the things in regards to the planning, I think that would be a great time for us all to be a part of that, supporting what they're trying to do, because it correlates with exactly what we're trying to do in regards to the citywide plan in regards to education. So I think that's very interesting that he was able to bring that before us, because that's really given me a mindset to say, this is definitely why we need to be where we are and doing what needs to be done, because it's all can kind of come together at the same time, in my opinion. If there are no more questions, Mr. Lance.
So Don, great presentation. Thanks for doing that. But I was wondering, would you be able to provide the maps that you provided in this slide in a PDF version so we can actually leverage that information a lot better than this site? Thank you.
And Ms.
Plants on the nose, one of my taglines. Maps are like Doritos.
Right. And I'm glad Lance said that. And thanks for joining us, Mr. Lance. You're fine. You're fine. Ms. Sanye was just the same. Everybody's been extremely busy. But one of the things I wanted to say, for those that were able to come a little later, the information that's here is really kind of leading up, like supporting documentation. He has this in paper form, but absolutely we can get it in the PDF form for everyone to be able to kind of navigate through as we're working through what we're working through. But I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance again to this isn't us just destroying trees just to destroy trees. This is really good information and a baseline for what we're really trying to do and how we're trying to move in the direction of getting it done. This, as I stated before, is the beginning. There is a lot of moving parts that's going to lead up to more to come as to what we're doing. And I want you guys to know and understand, myself, Ms. Sanye, we're here to represent the 7 board members. We've been identified and chosen to do this work, but it's not us necessarily doing it. We're more facilitating and supporting to ensure that the work gets done. But we do have representatives that are actually going to be, I want to say, boots on the ground, so to speak, doing a lot of the behind the scenes, building up, working with the focus groups, which is where you guys will come into place, being assigned to the different groups, ensuring that we're getting the input from different parts of the city on different levels and different aspects. But I want to make sure everyone understands and know Mike Jones is actually the governmental liaison. Mr. Jones, if you can stand, he, as well as Ms. Dorothy, I got to make sure I say it right, Ms. Dorothy Rowe Collins, will be serving as that entity along with the school board staff members. Ms. Lori will really be having a huge piece in this. Mr. Watson already has his hands full, I know, sir, but there are going to be sometimes we'll actually be looking to lean into you in kind of building the documentation and building what this actually looks like. So I wanted to make sure everybody kind of understands we're not meeting just to be meeting. When this group will actually start being called more into meetings, it'll be more of a reporting aspect to say, this is what we've been able to do from this group session, this group session, this group session. I have been told that this group has gotten large. We are trying to ensure we're doing the social distancing. We're not really equipped with all the equipment to make sure everyone has microphones. So we apologize for that. But we just want to make sure you guys know how this looks, how the intent and what this will look like, and how important everyone at this table is going to be in getting this process actually done. I want to recognize Dr. Roberts, who is the president of the school board, Dr. Williams, Dr. Adams. Without Dr. Adams, definitely, and we don't do this, but I like to do it. But Ms. Williams is the secretary, and she is the one that really does a lot of the behind the scene work on trying to get things done for us. So I want to let you know that we really do appreciate what you're doing. Ms. Sonia and myself, we're really trying to rev this up and make sure that we're getting the information out in a timely manner. If you guys have any questions, we welcome it. We welcome any input, because like I said, we don't have all the answers and we don't know, but this is definitely going to take a group effort in order to get this done. Yes, sir.
Just a comment, thank you, Mr. Rowe, that was very informative. There's that third part of the leg, and as we're talking about capital improvements in the future, I presume we'll have another ad hoc committee to look at getting a fair share of any of these capital improvements that goes to the St. Louis Public Schools. Because I just read another one today where there's a new development, and the plan is to lop off $6 million from the St. Louis Public Schools. And, you know, everyone should pay their fair share. Each of us does who are city residents. Thank you.
And I'm glad you're saying that, Mr. Clemens. That's the beauty to me of this. And I'm throwing it at him, but that's why we have, you know, SLDC at the table on things like this. That I think that's where all of us will kind of play that role to make sure that that fair share is happening, the voice is happening, the message is being put out there, and that people really understand that we're working together. So everybody knows without education, there could be no city. Without the city, there could be no education. So it's all something that we have not done in years, and that's working alongside of each other. And that's the only way we'll be able to bring a change. And what Don's saying, in my opinion, this is a once in a lifetime thing with all the funds that the city is getting at this point. Let's be positioned to the point that we can get it right. We can do it right and do right by the funds so we don't lose them. Yes, sir.
And Madam Chair, and one of the things that, just in the same spirit, we're not going to be distant. We want to be like this with you. We, you know, part of the reason to be here is some of you know me, and some of you know about city agencies, and Lance is here and Will is here. No, we think about it. We want to be able to coordinate with data, with our thoughts and input. So that's part of the mission to be here, is just to get connected. And I certainly know Mr. Jones from quite a while.
Mr. Will, did you have anything you would like to add? Besides your name, we want to speak. Right. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I apologize for being late. For you all who don't know, I'm also in school, and I had a situation at clinical where someone had to go into surgery, and I got a great learning opportunity, but it pushed me back a little bit. And I think what Tony has said, or Ms. Cousins has said, what all of you have said, what I was thinking about today on the way when I was late, I had a chance to make a phone call, and I was talking to my grandmother, and she was like, you know, I just think it's so insane that, like, you're getting a chance to come into leadership at a time where the city is actually working together. And she was like, you know, I don't recall in all of my time, like, I know that usually different sectors, because of personal relationships and because of politics, actually don't come together and have conversations. So I think, like, echoing what Tony said earlier, I think the fact that all of us are engaging in urban plan design, SLDC, I mean, I think all these major aspects in the city are engaging in our strategic planning, and we're trying to figure, we know the problems, we all know the problems, and I think we're trying to figure out solutions. And I'm really glad that we're able to come together at these tables and kind of have some crossover and understand that, you know, our city is interconnected. Anything that we do in one aspect, it impacts another. So I'm just glad that we can all be here to have these conversations. I'm glad that you all can make it. We will make sure, Mr. Knuckles, I know you asked for the PDF. We will make sure that this is sent in an email to you all. For everyone here, you'll get an email with everything that we got tonight. You'll all get with pieces of that.
And if you all have any questions in the meantime, while we're working on the next steps, or you want to talk about anything, or I know in each of your silos, you're working on things, we want the overlap. We want to have joint conversations. We want connected dialogue. So don't hesitate to reach out to us.
For the sake of extreme clarity, I don't care about the PowerPoint in PDF. I want the map in a larger scale version that we actually can get a little more granular. So
Don knows what you want.
I will just say one thing about the maps, and the maps are great, and we've actually utilized them with many of the people in this room. One aspect I think you would want to probably look at is, while this is clusters, you may also actually want to look at, and I know planning's done this for us in the past, map with actual numbers. So you can see within each area, like how many kids are actually in this area, how many school buildings are there, how many kids those school buildings accommodate, because that helps to add to thinking about capacity and geographical dispersion and all those things. So I'd say don't stop with these maps.
Oh, no.
I don't
Yeah.
think Don is thinking that, but I think that's a little more important than the clusters, the
Right.
numbers.
It is, and honestly, that's one of the reasons why I think it's very important to have Don or someone from that at the table when we're going into those stages of those work groups and focus groups, where we'll really be leaning into them to be able to give us that more detailed information so we can better understand how we should be moving forward. And if there is nothing else, I'm trying to keep, I'm tired too. I'm trying to keep with the time, make sure everyone is good. If no one has any questions, we would like to thank you guys for coming out. Please start looking at your email. We will be providing you with updated information, probably breakouts to see what the breakout sessions will actually be looking like and how things will be moving forward. We wanted to get this out before the year ended, and I want you guys to please try to have a safe and enjoyable holiday. Thank you.